Finish your first leader, but then go get your reels.
Coming up,
Bring it around, and now it's all yours.
the art of angling.
Looks good. Looks good.
How it can lead to some good-paying jobs. Jobs that usually go to guides who live outside the region and often outside of Alaska.
I see the ability for Alaskans to keep a lot of the sport fishing industry here right at home.
How the Bristol Bay Fly Fishing Academy hopes to change that.
This opens up a lot of doors. It's not just guiding, it's also like managing the lodge, working in the lodge.
Ahead, fishing for the future.
The other way. The hook goes the other way. There you go.
How to hook a new generation of anglers.
Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief that the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to Frontiers. In this week's program, we take you to Bristol Bay, which draws anglers from all over the world. You'd think that with such a fishing mecca in their own backyard, young people would naturally gravitate to the jobs that it creates. But that just hasn't been the case, something the Bristol Bay Fly Fishing and Guide Academy hopes to change. Every year, it brings students from around the region together to learn about guiding. This year, the academy was held at a lodge in King Salmon on the Naknek River. Beautiful and bountiful Bristol Bay, home of the Bear Trail Lodge, a family business that's out to hire as many local guides as possible.
Pinch it off right there. Pull, pull. Perfect. That's all it is to it. Don't make it more difficult than it is.
Nancy Lyon's mission to get these students hooked on fly fishing.
Something you can always do, you can take with you anywhere around the world. It's brought me all around the world traveling to fishing different exotic destinations.
And even if it doesn't lead to a career,
But it looks good. It looks like it's holding.
Nancy believes fly fishing develops skills that can set you up for a lifetime of success. Even something simple as tying a knot.
And there's your loop.
Knots may seem like a small thing to conquer, but they can be frustrating, and they're going to take time, and they're going to take lots of practice. And that all leads to valuable assets in your life.
For many students, it brings a sense of being in charge.
When you catch a fish, you know you tied the knots that help bring it in.
Bring it around, and now it's all yours. That is very nice.
Mac Menard is a retired state biologist who works in lessons about safety, science, and a little fish psychology.
Abby, I think the tail's probably just a little bit long. And what happens with this is a fish will come in and perhaps grab it, but you might not hook them.
There's just a bunch of like feathers and stuff sticking out, and it just looks bad.
For their next river trip, the students need to finish at least 3 flies.
No, you're doing fine. You're going to make it just fine. Take it up, take it up, take it up. One more and that's it.
Soon, frustration gives way to satisfaction.
There's something fun about chasing perfection, and these guys are doing better and better with every fly they make.
All right, hands in the air. Whee, we're going fishing. All right, you're off.
For the students, it's finally a chance to put everything they've learned into practice and perhaps launch a new career.
We have a fish on! Yahoo! That's a beauty. Look at that.
This is Travis Nikita's second year at the academy. For the new students, it was more of a struggle, not so easy to reel in a rainbow right away.
The other way. The hook goes the other way. There you go. Like that. Just boop. Congratulations.
Very fun catching it. First one out of the year so far.
Nice. All right.
With each success,
Excellent.
confidence grows.
Ooh, that looks juicy.
One good thing about fly fishing, it gives you time to think and dream.
This opens up a lot of doors. It's not just guiding, it's also like managing a lodge, working in the lodge, becoming like a biologist and things like that.
This is going to imitate like perhaps a baby smolt. It's about supper time, don't you think, Kaylee?
Okay, I'm gonna put a little line in.
There's a lot these students already know, things that guides from outside Alaska have to learn, like how to handle themselves in the cold, where the shallow spots are on the river, or how to watch birds to figure out where the fish are. This academy is only a week, but Nancy believes it gives graduates a deeper appreciation of what Bristol Bay has to offer and steers them towards opportunities they may not have thought possible.
Instead of having outsiders come in, run our lodges, run our camps, bring in fishermen, and take the dollars out of our state, I see the ability for us to create camps, use our resources, and keep our dollars in state through these kids that have been born and raised here and really want to stay here.
The undercurrent here, that old saying, if you teach someone to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. The Bristol Bay Fly Fishing and Guide Academy just celebrated its 10th anniversary. Coming up, life after the academy.
You're given that whole experience by people coming to the lodge from all over the world.
How one academy graduate parlayed his experience into a job at the Bear Trail Lodge. Also ahead, just how big of a slice of Alaska's sport fishing industry do lower 48ers actually have? Why, that's hard to find out. It's not clear how many of Alaska's fishing guides are from the lower 48. Now, the state does keep track of their mailing addresses when they apply for a license. So this is one snapshot. Here's a look at some numbers from 2016. And you can see why it's hard to pinpoint the exact number. There are 3 categories of licenses: business only, guides only, and a combination license for a guide who also operates a business. There are about 120 business licenses, and about a third of those are out-of-staters. In the guide-only category, about 46% live outside, as do about 13% of those who hold that combination license. There are about 3,200 license holders in 2 of the biggest groups, the guide-only and the combination categories. About 1,100 of those, or 35%, are from the lower 48. And again, since these are only mailing addresses, it's hard to tell if these numbers really give us a true picture of how much locals benefit from this fishery. Well, if it weren't for people in the lower 48 who developed the sport fishery in Bristol Bay, it probably wouldn't be the world-class destination that it is today. That said, if there was more local talent available, guides would probably be snapped up, just like Ekwok Asplin was. The mornings are almost always magnificent. One of the perks of the job for Ekwok Asplin, a graduate of the Bristol Bay Fly Fishing and Guide Academy. Ekwok grew up commercial fishing, so when the anglers descended on Bristol Bay, his family worked a set net. The academy was his first exposure to a job that is full of surprises, like the occasional bear that lopes across a sandbar.
It's a pretty small bear, so I'd say it's probably its first year away from its mom.
Opportunity seems to be ever on the wing.
You're given that whole experience by people coming to the lodge from all over the world.
So what's your dream?
My dream would probably to be having a stable job that's consistent and that sort of thing. The troopers have always been in my back of my mind.
Ekwok's summer job has helped him pursue that dream. It pays for college, and the money is more reliable than commercial fishing.
Of course, I don't have what I'm looking for on the top of here. This is the one.
On most days, Ekwok feels like this eagle, like he's found a real prize.
Fortunately, the fishing's always good.
Wealth from the waters of Bristol Bay, shared in so many ways. Jack Asplin says being a guide has also opened up doors to other careers. He says some of the clients he's taken out on the river run big companies and have offered him jobs. Well, coming up, we'll hear more from Tim Troll and Casey Sifsoff about how the Bristol Bay Fishing Academy aims to help locals get a bigger share of the pie. The bottom line for many rural communities, they'd like to see more locals reap more of the benefits and keep the money here in Alaska. Well, joining us now, Tim Troll, one of the founders of the Bristol Bay Fly Fishing and Guide Academy, and Casey Sifsoff, who works for the Bristol Bay Native Corporation and coordinates some of the activities for the program. And it's also one of the groups that supports the Academy, Bristol Bay Native Corporation. Let's talk about sort of the overall picture in Bristol Bay. We've talked about the statewide numbers. In the sport fishing industry in Bristol Bay, how much of it is dominated by people from outside the community?
Well, I don't have a precise number. I mean, I have a feel that it's obviously more dominated by those from outside. I mean, it was an industry that was started, of course, as you said, by outside interests. But we have not seen as much local participation in it as we'd like, and part of that is because really there aren't that many. Sport fishing is not a traditional activity in Bristol Bay.
Right, subsistence, commercial fishing.
Commercial. So it's not something that has been natural to people out there, and it's been controversial in the past.
So 10 years now running, and you are one of the founders of this program. So tell us how it all got started.
Well, I'd say as many good ideas come about, they're cooked up in a steam bath in Bristol Bay, and it was in a maqii in Ekwok that I had with the tribal chief, Luki Akelkok of Ekwok, who runs his own sport fishing business and had been for many years, and was worried about how his business was going to continue. And so I don't know where it began, but basically we came out of it saying if I could help raise the money, Luki would handle the logistics, his wife Pauline would do the cooking. They had the Ekwok Lodge on the Nushagak, and we'd see if we could make it happen.
That looks good.
Yeah.
So, but you know, Luki probably opened the door because traditionally a lot of elders have frowned against sport fishing because they say it's against their culture to, quote, play with the fish. And they feel like, you know, traditionally the right thing to do is the fish offers itself to you, so you're supposed to eat it, not let it go.
Yeah, but, and I think that's why it's important that it really began locally from Ekwok and from a tribal chief who has actually been in the sport fishing business and was a commercial fisherman himself.
So let's talk about some of the graduates since the program, because you've had now, what, 10 classes? Mm-hmm. And yes. Of course, one year you had to skip, and why was that?
Couldn't raise enough money. I mean, the idea was still hard to catch on. The first year we had to cut it down to 3 days. Try to, you know, call villages, get kids to come. The next year, couldn't raise enough money. Finding the third year, we were able to bring it back.
And now, look at all the photographs that you have of these academies. You must feel like a proud father.
Well, I share that fatherhood with Luki, and yes, we're proud that we got it started, but, you know, we only really, as I'd say, stretched the canvas and maybe primed it and did a little sketch. It's other folks who have really put the color to the painting and made it happen over these last 10 years.
Now, I understand in the beginning it was hard to recruit these students.
Yes, we were literally in villages calling people we knew and finding out what their kids and nephews were doing and trying to rope them into the academy, because we do pay all the expenses. It was difficult because sport fishing, again, and fly fishing in particular, is just not something that people traditionally did.
So how is it different today?
So I think for, you know, the program, it's gained a lot of momentum over the years as, you know, it's caught on that, you know, kids really enjoy this and they're getting really excited about it, and different lodges are, you know, wanting the exposure of having these opportunities with these kids. And so I think that the program will just continue to be successful and to grow out of, you know, that interest.
So is it hard to get into this program?
It's not. So it's a simple application process. So, you know, usually the applications are rolled out in the early springtime, and kids apply, we participate through social media, but a lot of it is word of mouth. So past participants of the academy tell their siblings or their friends, and that's how we get a lot of applicants throughout the year.
So what's the eligibility for this? Any particular guidelines?
Yeah, so we're looking at local candidates or BB&C shareholders and descendants that have some type of affiliation with the region. Again, it's that focus on that local knowledge, that local hire, and so we really focus on that in terms of eligibility requirements.
So, some of these locations from year to year vary. Like this is from a past year, and it's not in Naknek where this year's Naknek King Salmon, where this year's academy was held. Why do you move the locations?
Well, that just evolved because we needed to have places to hold it, and it seemed to turn out that we sort of kicked the idea, can we move it to the 3 major regions of Bristol Bay, which if you're from Bristol Bay, that'd be the east side, the west side, and around Lake Iliamna. So we've been fortunate to find lodges in those areas that would do that. And we also thought that really one of the things we needed to do in the region is begin to mix things up. And so it was really good to get kids from one side of the bay to the other side of the bay to see country that they might not otherwise see.
And that's kind of interesting that they aren't familiar with other parts of Bristol Bay. You'd think they would be.
Usually, I mean, if you grow up in a particular area, unless you travel there for sports or some other activity, there's really no reason to go there unless you know people. So it's very common, actually, for people not to be exposed to other parts of the region.
But it sounds like what kids get from this experience, and young adults, is that they get a deeper appreciation of that area they call home.
Yes.
And that was one of the motivations also for the academy, is to get that.
So besides that appreciation, what else are you offering the students? I mean, it seemed like while I was there, and it was just 2 days, that you really saw these kids get training from the best of the best. I mean, some really stellar presenters were there.
Yeah, and again, I think that goes to the success of previous years. You have more people that are wanting to be involved, and they're not just learning about fly fishing, they're learning about concepts of conservation and also this career and customer service aspect. So we're teaching them a whole lot more than just simply fly fishing. They're learning how to do resumes, do interviews, as well as increase their communication skills, and how do they market those skills towards a future job.
And you do wonder, overall how successful these graduates have been. We earlier had showcased Ekwok Asplin, and of course he's now working as a guide, and it's a vehicle, it's a stepping stone, and we see him here out guiding clients from the lower 48. And he says he loves it when he gets people from all over the world, the Japanese, the German. So what do we know about some of the graduates?
Well, we've had any number of graduates that have at least had opportunities to work in lodges, whether it be as a guide or in housekeeping or just being a deckhand, those kind of things, that exposure to that industry. Bristol Bay Native Corporation is now in that industry, have bought into several nice lodges, and so that's a great opportunity for shareholders to work with their own corporation and get that experience, not just in fly fishing. Our thought when we first started this academy was the basic thing that kids had to know was how to fly fish. That was the meat. But we could bring the dessert. We could bring that experience of having lived in the region that could make the, the client experience much more. We also knew that right off we had to also provide the equipment, and they had to go home with the equipment. So every kid leaves with a fly rod and all the gear they need to learn how to tie flies. So whether they continue it or not, they have that basic understanding.
So what is it about Ekwok that strikes you? Because he is kind of a shy person. You have to pry things out of him. He's not one to brag on himself.
Well, that's probably not untypical or atypical, but he came through the academy twice, and certainly by the second time around, he was certainly much more outgoing. And I find him to be quite an outgoing person. You have to just ask the right questions.
Maybe it's hard for him to brag on himself,
Right. He's very humble.
Yeah.
But for these students, maybe who feel maybe a little bit shy or afraid to ask about things, I guess this must be a chance for them to come out of their shells and blossom a bit.
Well, I hope so, and that's also one reason why we have had an opportunity for some of the students to come back for a second year. That first year, they might be much more shy. It's still a new skill for them. They get their rod, they get their reel. By the second year, if they come back, they're usually a little bit easier. They understand what Client Day is going to be all about.
Oh, tell me about Client Day.
Well, go ahead, Casey.
So Client Day is the ultimate test, I guess I would say. So it's an opportunity for the students to take all they've learned throughout the week and actually test it at a day in the field. So we have clients that are flown in, we have some local clients that participate, and they take them out on the water. They teach them everything that they need to know, how to cast, you know, what to do in terms of when they catch the fish, and, you know, they're tying their flies, or, you know, they've tied flies, and they do their knots if necessary. So really, it's the ultimate test of what they've learned.
And that's good that they have that sort of feedback, and it probably helps build their confidence. But I guess people always want to know the bottom line. I mean, how much does this cost? And in terms of other types of programs, I mean, how much bang for the buck do you think there is out of this?
Well, it's not cheap, let's just put it that way, particularly when so much of it is really donated. All the time, all the instructors are donated time. Even the rods and reels are donated. Bristol Bay Native Corporation, Bristol Bay Economic Development Corporation, the Bureau of Land Management, Trout Unlimited have all seen the benefit of this program. I think we're all willing to say that you're not going to see the results immediately. We are seeing more of our locals get into that business, and it's going to be a while before there's certainly a majority, and that's maybe not necessarily the goal.
Well, how willing are the lodges maybe to hire a local trained guide?
Well, certainly in the case of Bear Trail Lodge, it's not been a problem, and BBNC is certainly hiring more. And it's an education program both ways.
I also think, too, when the lodges have the opportunity to host the academy at their lodge, they see firsthand the capability of these students and their potential as an employee, too. So I think that that's another benefit of different lodges to host, is that they can see the benefit right there at their lodge. And
many host lodges have hired our graduates.
Yes. So what kind of feedback have you had from lodges that have hired the locally trained academy guides?
I mean, from what I've heard is that the guides that end up working there are often requested by clients because it's an enriched experience for them having a local guide on the water with them. So, you know, it's great. It's great feedback.
Are you surprised by that?
I think we knew inherently that would be the case, and we just had to get our kids to be comfortable sharing that experience with others, and knowing that once they do, certainly the clients would really appreciate that. So it was a gut feeling, and I think it's proving out.
So what's ahead for the Academy? You said that you evolve over the years, like you've expanded it to 2 years for some of the applicants. What would you like to see happen with this?
Well, one, that it continue, and I think it should continue. There's certainly challenges ahead in the industry, and I think we need to be prepared for those. And, you know, one of the other things that I look at is these kids are, they're also going to be the future leaders of the region and in their village corporations and probably even in the regional corporation. Mm-hmm. So understanding that industry is going to be pretty important for them because they own the land out there that these lodges want to use. And it's great to see that Bristol Bay Native Corporation is now breaking into that.
All right, well, we want to thank you both for joining us. Well, we hope that this show has given other communities an idea of how they might inspire more homegrown talent. Before we leave you, though, we want to give you a parting look at some of the Fly Fish Academy members over the years. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.